Hello, this is Julia at the Greenwell Springs branch of the East Baton Rouge Parish Library System. Today, I'll be showing you how to make a sea turtle feltie. Your kits should contain 2 felt shell pieces, 2 felt head pieces, 4 felt front flipper pieces, 4 felt rear flipper pieces, 1 felt tail piece, embroidery floss to match the head and flippers, a packet with 2 embroidery needles and 6 sewing pins, a small bag of polyfill stuffing, a small paintbrush, a tiny bag of green paint to decorate the shell, and a tiny bag of shiny black fabric paint for the eyes. You will need a pair of scissors and a pencil or other blunt tipped instrument to help stuff the limbs at home. You'll start by cutting a length of embroidery floss about 4 feet long. Embroidery floss is made up of 6 smaller strands lightly twisted together, and we only want to use 3 of these strands at a time. So starting at one end, pull the length of floss apart until you have 2 lengths of 3 strands each. Thread your needle with the 3 strands, match up the ends, and tie a knot at the very end. You're going to start sewing the pieces together now. You're starting with the head pieces and matching them up like so, and then sewing along the outside with a blanket stitch, leaving the square side open. For the blanket stitch, push the needle through the fabric from the front to the back, looping the thread behind the needle with each stitch. Tie it off by going through your last stitch again and then through the loop before pulling the knot tight. Once you've gone all the way around, you're going to take a little bit of your polyfill and stuff it into the open end, and then set it aside. You're going to do the same thing with each of the flippers. With the large front flippers, you'll start on the inside curve and pause when you get back up the outside to where it curves back in. Once you get there, don't cut the floss, just hold it to the side so that you can stuff polyfill down into the bottom of the long fin. Once you've got that part filled, finish sewing up the top edge of the flipper and add a little bit more polyfill into the end. Once you've got all the flippers sewn up around the edges, you're going to pin them in place between the shell pieces. You'll want to pin all of the limbs in place except the tail. Leave the tail out until you've sewn all the way around the outer edge so that you have a place to stuff the shell. Take your needle and a new piece of thread. Start your thread in between the 2 pieces to hide the knot, and starting from the bottom of the shell, Just below one of the lower flippers, you're going to sew from below the foot up around the top of the shell and back down to the bottom on the other side using a simple back stitch with the simple line of stitches on top. You'll want to leave a visible edge between your stitched line and the edge of the felt, but you need to sew close enough to the edge to attach the limbs. Remove the pins as each limb is sewn in. When you get back down to the other side and all of the limbs except the tail have been sewn in, pull the thread out of the way and use the opening at the bottom of the shell to stuff the shell with polyfill. When you've got enough stuffing in the shell to give it a little squish, pin the tail in between the layers in the opening and finish sewing around the bottom of the shell, securing the tail as you go. I'm going to tie a knot in the end of my thread and then push the needle through the feltie until it comes out this other side so that I can clip it off and the thread disappears. Now that the turtle is all sewn together, we get to decorate it. First of all, take the tiny baggie of black paint and snip just the very smallest bit off of a bottom corner. You can now squeeze out 2 black dots on either side of the head for eyes. Set it aside to let the paint dry. Once the eyes are dry, you can use the small flat paintbrush and the green paint to decorate the shell with the kind of pattern you see on real sea turtles. Using a small amount of green paint on the end of the brush, paint a line over the top of the sewn line around the edge, then paint 3 slightly squished hexagons in the center of the shell, and then paint lines connecting the corners of the hexagons to the border of the shell. If you like, you can go back and do some touching up on places where the lines aren't as clear. Once the pattern is dry, you are officially done.